Head, neck, or spinal injuries are often caused by high-risk or high-impact activities. Things like entering headfirst into shallow water, colliding with another swimmer, entering the water from a height, or striking the water with great impact. Always consider the mechanism of injury when deciding how to respond. Even if you believe a head, neck, or spinal injury may be present, you must also consider the presence of other life-threatening conditions. For example, is the victim breathing? Is she bleeding severely? Does she have a pulse? Your priority is to care for any life-threatening conditions. If at any time the victim is not breathing or has other life-threatening conditions, immediately remove the victim from the water and provide appropriate care. To assist victims with a possible head, neck, or spinal injury who are in the water, two techniques can be used to provide manual inline stabilization after activating the emergency action plan and quickly approaching the victim: the head splint technique and the head and chin support. The objective of the head splint technique is to minimize movement of the victim's head, neck, and spine. The head splint technique can be used in shallow or deep water and at, near, or below the surface. The technique varies slightly based on the victim's location and position in the water. To perform a head splint if the victim is in shallow water and face up at or near the surface, stand behind the victim's head and lower your body to shoulder depth. Holding the victim's arms between her shoulders and elbows, gently position the arms alongside her head, minimizing movement of the head and neck. Slowly and firmly squeeze the victim's arms against her head so it is in line with her body as you position yourself at her side. Position the victim's head close to the crook of your arm. Her head should be in line with her body. Check for consciousness and signs of life, and continue to monitor her condition as you wait for help. With a face-up victim in deep water, the head splint technique is the same, except that you use a rescue tube for support during each step. For a victim who is face down at the water's surface, the head splint technique is slightly different. Whether in shallow or deep water, approach a face-down victim from the side. In deep water, remain on the rescue tube, allowing for additional support. Carefully grasp the victim's arms midway between her shoulders and her elbows. Your right hand grasps the victim's right arm, and your left hand grasps the victim's left arm. Gently position her arms alongside her head, minimizing movement of the head or neck. Squeeze her arms firmly against her head to create inline stabilization. Glide the victim forward to raise the victim's legs and provide support during the turn. Turn her face up by pushing her arm that is closest to you under the water and away from you while pulling her other arm toward you across the surface. Continue to provide inline stabilization throughout the turn by squeezing the victim's arms tightly against her head. Position the victim with her head close to the crook of your arm. Her head should be in line with her body. Check for consciousness and breathing. If the victim is in deep water, gently tow her to shallow water if possible. Continue to monitor her condition. To perform a head splint in extremely shallow water when the victim is face down, first, walk to the victim's side. Position her arms alongside her head, squeezing firmly to secure her head between her arms. Roll the victim toward you, stepping above the victim's head and lowering your arm so that her arms move over yours. Your hands will rotate as you turn the victim face up, so maintain pressure. Check for signs of consciousness and breathing from your position above and behind the victim's head. Continue to monitor her condition as you wait for help. Spinal backboards are used to immobilize a victim so he is not further injured during relocation and transport. At least 2 lifeguards are needed to place and secure a victim on a backboard. The mechanics of using a spinal backboard are essentially the same in both deep and shallow water, although rescuers aren't able to stand in deep water. Remember, your priority is to care for any life-threatening conditions. If at any time during the procedure the victim is not breathing or has other life-threatening conditions, immediately remove the victim from the water and provide appropriate care. To place and secure a victim with signs of life on a backboard in shallow water, the primary rescuer continues manual inline stabilization until another lifeguard arrives with the backboard. The assisting lifeguard removes the head immobilizer device from the board, then enters the water and submerges the backboard. He positions the board under the victim so that it extends slightly beyond the victim's head, and the victim's head is centered on the board's head immobilizer. As the assisting lifeguard guides the board into position, the primary rescuer gently moves her elbow that is under the victim's head to the top of the backboard, taking care to maintain inline stabilization. With the victim in place on the board, the assisting lifeguard stabilizes the victim, holding the victim's chin and chest with one arm and applying upward pressure under the backboard with his other arm. The lifeguards move the victim to the side of the pool, with the head end by the pool's edge. The primary rescuer then releases her hold. The primary rescuer lowers the victim's arms, then positions a rescue tube under the head of the backboard to provide additional support. She balances the board on the tube with her forearms, and then takes over manual stabilization of the victim, placing her hands on each side of the victim's head. The assisting lifeguard secures the victim to the backboard with at least 3 straps. First, he secures a strap high across the victim's chest and under his armpits to prevent him from sliding. Second, he secures a strap across the victim's hips, arms, and hands. And third, he secures a strap across the victim's thighs. He then rechecks each strap to ensure the victim is firmly secured to the backboard. If the straps are too loose, the victim may slide during the removal. Tighten the straps until it is difficult to slide a finger between the strap and the victim. Now the primary rescuer and the assisting lifeguard work together to secure the victim's head to the backboard with the head immobilizer device without losing stabilization. Secure the head immobilizer device by placing a strap low across the victim's forehead. The assisting lifeguard may support the foot end of the backboard with 1 or 2 rescue tubes. With 1 lifeguard on each side, the lifeguards lift the head of the backboard so it is supported by the edge of the pool. 1 stays at the head of the board and holds it in place. The other lifeguard gets out of the pool to provide support from the deck. Once on land, the lifeguard grasps the head of the board, holding it in place while the other rescuer exits the pool and grasps the backboard. Both lifeguards slide the backboard up and over the edge of the pool and out of the water by stepping backward while keeping their knees bent. The board will be angled somewhat based on the height of the deck above the water and the type of gutter system. However, try to keep the board as horizontal as practical. They gently lower the backboard to the ground and reassess the victim, providing appropriate care. Additional rescuers can help by submerging and positioning the backboard under the victim, supporting the primary rescuer at the head of the backboard in deep water, supporting the backboard while the head immobilizer device and straps are secured, placing and securing the head immobilizer device or backboard straps, communicating with and reassuring the victim, guiding the backboard as it is removed from the water, removing the backboard from the water, assessing the victim's condition, and assisting with care.